collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, the United Nations Committee Against Torture publishes its recommendations for Cyprus.
And this is another very serious problem. If repeatedly there is violation of the convention and there is ill treatment or degrading treatment, but there is not an effective mechanism on the side of the society, on the side of the government to punish this treatment, then it becomes a serious problem of impunity in the country.
We'll hear about the Cyprus entry that's reached the finals of the Imagine Cup.
In Cyprus, in the certain times, it's cheaper for you to use electricity. So simply you can put your washing machine ready, and as soon as it's reaching to the cheapest point, your washing machine automatically is becoming on.
We'll get the lowdown on the annual Ancient Greek Drama Festival.
I think one of the reasons that keeps the festival going is the fact that people have really over the years embraced it. And when I say people, I mean all the communities of the island.
And meet the author of a hilarious new book about the British Forces Broadcasting Service.
And the result of this was that we were incarcerated in a back room. Already I could see a little packet of white powder being slipped into our suitcases, and already I could see us hanging and dangling nicely from the end of a rope somewhere in Brunei.
June 26 was International Day in support of victims of torture, and the United Nations Committee Against Torture published its recommendations on torture and other degrading treatment in Cyprus. Doros Polikarpou of KISA, the NGO which campaigns for equality, support and anti-racism, has studied the UN's conclusions.
Yes, so actually this report, it was a result of an ongoing process. We had the visits of the committee to Cyprus. They had meetings with NGOs, with governmental authorities. They visited themselves the places. And then there is an expert committee that preparing the conclusions, and we have the concluding remarks. Actually, it's a very extensive text. It's impossible to describe all the details. But the main areas, I think, that we have to take in consideration is that the committee expressed concern about the situation in Cyprus. And when we speak about protection of victims of torture, we mean people that they might have experienced in the past torture or ill treatment, degrading treatment, and they arrive on the island. And we have an obligation to offer them, first of all, protection, but also rehabilitation from their very traumatic experience. But we have also the other area of concern is people who are in the country and they are, for example, deprived of their freedom in case they are either detained or imprisoned. Then they are under risk to get ill-treated, or they might, to a certain extent, experience as well torture.
The other interesting thing I think I read in the conclusions of the report was that it was obligatory for these people to have access to legal advice and representation, particularly in the cases of possible deportation. Now, that's something that we've covered so many times before. That isn't happening at all here, is it?
Well, the idea is, if we simplify the issue, is that when you are in contact with law enforcement, the law enforcement authorities, they have, first of all, to give sufficient information to the people about how to defend and protect them from ill treatment, but also from decisions, administrative decisions, for example, detention or deportation. These areas are covered by community law, but also international law, in a way so that the people, they must have independent information, they must have access to lawyers. NGOs and other human rights organizations, they must have access to these people, as well as when they want to challenge these administrative decisions, they must, in case they don't have their own means, get approved legal aid in order to be able to challenge these decisions at court.
And that legal aid should be provided by the government.
Yes, of course. I mean, this is very important, because we speak about a new situation, that detention, deportation from the country accusations for ill treatment, these are areas that they are considered that you cannot anymore handle them on administrative level, and the people, they must have the right, and if they don't have money, they have the right to get legal aid from the government to challenge this decision at the court. This is one area. The second area that is very important is the area of how you create a protection mechanism that works preventive towards, for example, law enforcement officials in a way so that you minimize the risk that they show ill treatment or that they exercise ill treatment or torture towards detainees or people under their control.
It's not just the ill treatment either, it's the degrading treatment, isn't it? And if we look at the conditions, for example, in the Menoia detention centre, it would seem from the many stories coming out of there and the several cases recently of attempted suicides, that the people who are in there, sometimes for months at a time, are experiencing not perhaps torture, but certainly not the sort of treatment that they would experience in other European countries.
Well, yes, indeed. The issue here is, first of all, do we have the adequate training? Do they get the adequate training, these law enforcement staff, that they are in contact with the people? Second is, in case we have such allegation, is there an efficient mechanism to examine such cases?
Independent mechanism.
Of course, an efficient and independent mechanism that is able to, unfortunately, until now, one of the main problems we have in Cyprus is that we have not yet developed such a mechanism where we can reach a situation where you can find evidence enough, and we come to the other issue. If you don't have evidence enough, we come to the issue of impunity. And this is another very serious problem. If repeatedly there is violation of the convention and there is ill treatment or degrading treatment, but there is not an effective mechanism on the side of the society, on the side of the government, to punish this treatment, then it becomes a serious problem of impunity in the country. And I think these are the areas where the committee as well, they draw attention. We have migrants should, first of all, for migration issues should not get detained, so that the privation of the freedom of people, or they should not convicted as criminals because of migration issues. The second is that when they must be detained, this must be only for a short period of time. They have to be treated with respect of their rights, and they must have the right actually to defend themselves about the conditions of their detention, but also about the decision of detention and deportation in front of courts. So these are the main ideas that actually we have to work along. So this is the philosophy behind this issue. And of course, again, ill treatment, degrading treatment, and abuse of power, these are areas that they are covered under the Convention against torture and ill treatment.
What is KISA going to do with this report? Presumably you have to have meetings with the relevant authorities. They've presumably also seen the report. It's obviously not binding, it's recommendations, but where does it take us? Does it move us any further forward?
Well, it's a process of, it's not just a recommendation actually, it's not something that it was created without the involvement of the government. So there is a process of exchange with the authorities. It's an agreed document. Of course, it's not a legal binding document, I quite agree, but politically, it's a document that the government and the authorities and all of us cannot ignore or say, oh, it's just an opinion. It has its validity and it has its weight when it comes to what we are going to do. So KISA was involved actually in the preparation of this report. The guidelines according to which they prepare this report is that they will get the opinion also from the government, directly from the people, but also from the NGOs. We submitted extensive reports, shadow reports, informations in advance on the situation in the country, and now we have these results. I think it's a good report. What we should do, I think it's very important, and KISA will continue to do so. First of all, we are going to continue to monitor the situation in the centres. We still regularly visit the centres and see if the suggestions are reflected in improvements happening in the centres. We have a new situation because the director of Menoia is replaced, It was one of the main problems we had there. The director of Menoia had one approach that it was very difficult and bring it in compatible with this philosophy that we described before. His opinion was more or less that we have to handle the detention center like a prison, and it became slowly actually like a prison, the detention place, which is just an administrative, should have been administered in a completely different way. We will see the new director. Hopefully it's a person that will approach these issues according to these suggestions and recommendations. On the other hand, we will try to have meetings and roundtables with the authorities and see how we can work out at least the priorities and see that we do follow up regularly on progress made in this area. Otherwise, usually you leave this report there and then we wake up in 4 years and we realize that we didn't implement any of these recommendations.
And presumably it's 4 years until the next report.
Yes, until we have the next evaluation, actually. So it's, from this point of view, it's good to work on this, do the follow-up, but on the level of political decisions and on the level of the actual praxis, and raising awareness in the society. It's very important that the society is aware of these facts, of this recommendation, of the conditions, because I believe that it's an issue that is connected to the general situation of human rights protection in the country. If we allow, for example, and we accept violations of human rights in one area, usually we prepare the society in general to accept human rights violations. And this is, from our point of view, very important that the public and the society is aware of what's going on, and on this way we increase pressure also on the authorities to implement as many as possible of these recommendations.
Noros, thanks very much indeed for joining us, telling us about that report from the United Nations Committee Against Torture, published to mark the International Day in support of the victims of torture. Noros Polikarpou of KISA, that's the Cypriot NGO dealing with equality, support and anti-racism.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Moloch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
The 18th International Festival of Ancient Greek Drama kicks off tomorrow at the Ancient Odeon in Paphos. It's organised by the Cyprus Centre of the International Theatre Institute, whose board member Elada Evangelou joins me to tell us all about the festival. Elada, it's been a very difficult 12 months, of course, for theatres all over the island, and pretty amazing that this now institutionalised festival in Cyprus has managed to go ahead despite the difficulties.
I think one of the reasons that keeps the festival going is the fact that people have really over the years embraced it. And when I say people, I mean all the communities of the island, because being an international festival, we have performances from all over the world, like from China to Russia, from kind of Thailand to Belgium. Over the years, we've hosted a lot of people. So I think what the festival has done is kind of open up the scope, both of theatre, but also of ancient Greek drama, both comedy and tragedy, to the Cypriot public. And one of the reasons why it's still being kept and maintained, and this year, although the funding is less, still funded by the Ministry of Education, is the fact that the place that this festival holds is very substantial and very essential like for speakers of different languages or of different communities on the island. I think there's a place for it.
Well, and you do have Greek and English surtitles, don't you? So it also means that people who perhaps before didn't go to ancient Greek drama because they didn't understand the language, although a lot of it is actually more in the movement than the language to some degree, but they can now understand it. So it seems that you've got audiences of every nationality viewing performances by every nationality.
Yeah, exactly. It's really incredible because the festival also appeals to tourists. So even people that come to Cyprus for a small time, like in July, to have a vacation, they would actually come to Paphos in the amphitheater or to Kourion to see their performance. So this kind of that creates a really fantastic mix of audiences. So think of like a German tourist coming to Cyprus and seeing a Cypriot theatre company perform like a play that they can understand. So they get a taste of local culture as we get a taste of international theatre culture.
It started off in Paphos, but now there are performances in Paphos, Nicosia, in Limassol, close to Limassol at Kourion. And mostly, I think, they're in the amphitheatres. That brings something extra, doesn't it, to these plays? Because they were originally written to be performed in amphitheatres.
Yeah, quite true. I think they belong there. I don't want to make these types of generalizations because there have been incredible performances of ancient Greek drama plays in closed spaces. But I don't know, I think there's a magic. And because all three theatres where they're performed, two of them, they're Roman, so they have this, I guess, this wisdom of the architecture of the time. And the one in Nicosia at the School for the Blind is also kind of, I think, part of the fabric of the city by now. So, there seems to be a really wonderful blend with the spaces also.
So, very quickly, the criteria for choosing who takes part.
What we try to do is we try to pick between 6 and 8 plays this year because, I guess, of the finances, there's 6. So first of all, we kind of have a limitation because there's a month. The second thing is, of course, quality. What we ask for is for people to send us DVDs of their performances. There's a committee that comprises of representatives from the Cyprus Centre for the International Theatre Institute, from the Ministry of Education, from the Cyprus Tourism Organisation, and occasionally also from the Paphos municipality. And we kind of sit down as a group and we talk about the performances. Another criterion is, of course, how adaptable they are to the spaces. So in the cases of a lot of performances that come from kind of closed theatre spaces, we need to talk about and see, is this possible to be done in an open-air theatre? And finally, of course, it's the cost. So the cost is a determining factor. Some sets are too big, too elaborate, too expensive to carry to Cyprus, and sometimes even too expensive to be redone here. So all these are criteria, but the most important being quality.
And what have we got this year?
Well, this year, 6 companies are going to be hosted. We have 2 Cypriot companies. We have 1 company from Greece, 1 from Croatia, 1 from Italy, and 1 from Belgium. And it's kind of a vast, I guess, quite a large array of plays. And there's one comedy, it's Lysistrata, coming from Greece. It's a really fantastic performance, and 5 tragedies.
So it kicks off tomorrow. The first performance is by whom?
The first performance is by a Croatian company, by the National Theatre of Croatia in Zagreb, and it's Medea. And it will be at the ancient Paphos Amphitheatre, which is a really fantastic space.
It is a great space, and that's traditionally where the festival was,
exactly.
So that's where the opening is.
Yes.
But it does run through all the way till the end of the month.
Yes.
And I think I'm right in saying that the details are at
www.greekdramafest.com. Yes, that's the site of the festival. You can also, of course, find us on Facebook. The International Theatre Institute of Cyprus has a Facebook group, and you can find also information at 7000-2414. That's our number. And you can get tickets from the So Easy kiosks all over the island and at www.soldOuttickets.com.cy.
Elada Evangelou, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Rosie.
Listen online to the Cyprus News Digest on YouTube or at cyprusmail.libsyn.com. The latest program is uploaded every Friday, and if you missed one, you can catch up there.
A group of students from the University of Nicosia are being entered for a competition called the Imagine Cup. Well, there's lots of money up for grabs if they win it, and the team coordinator of the Ladybug project is Puya Tohiri. He's with me now. Puya, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us first about the Imagine Cup.
Okay, Imagine Cup is the biggest Microsoft competition for students around the world. Many teams from different countries, they are competing in this competition. And this year, 2014, the competition is going to hold in Seattle, United States, and we are one of the 35 teams that we're going to be there.
Now, the 35 teams, have they been whittled down from thousands that applied? Is this like the finals?
Yes, exactly. These 35 teams, they are the final teams from many teams that they enter to Imagine Cup. Imagine Cup has 3 levels. The first level is a national level, that the national teams, they are going there, they're presenting their ideas. Then there is a regional level, and then there is a world final level. So we passed the 2 stages of the national level and the regional level, and now we are in the final level.
So tell us about the Ladybug project. What is it?
Okay, Ladybug project is the smart platform, and also we have a smart device which we can control, measure and monitor energy consumption, especially for now electricity consumption of one house or one business premises. So by setting up this platform and these devices behind each appliances, you can control your appliances, how they are acting or how you want. For example, you want to set a timer for your appliances to become on or off, you can do that. And also this platform is connected to the electricity tariff of each country. For example, in Cyprus, in the certain times, it's cheaper for you to use electricity. So simply you can put your washing machine ready, and as soon as it's reaching to the cheapest point, your washing machine automatically is becoming on, because it's the cheapest point for your electricity consumption. Also, you can set the modes for your house. For example, you're going out from your house. You can set the mode that when you're going out, all the lights going to go off, TV is going to go off, and when you're going back home, even you can talk through your phone to the system, and the phone, before you get home, everything can be on, and you can enjoy having everything on for you.
How difficult was it to put together the technology for this? You're a team of what, I think 4 people?
Yeah, we have 4 people, and we have 1 mentor in our team. The mentor, he's Mr. George Theoharos. He's focusing on the technology part and the device. Mr. Hassan Adnani, he's focusing on the platform, website, and the communication between our device, which we call it the Leaf, and the website. Mr. Ali Tayyari, he's responsible for our phone and application development. He's designing our mobile application. And Mr. Greg Vishnumulakala, he's responsible for our logistics and the business idea.
Whether you win or not, it's an idea that can certainly become a business venture. Is that your aim?
Yes, of course. Already many people, they are contacting us. First of all, they are congratulating us with this nice idea, and they want to work with us. Because based on the rules and regulations, even in Europe, by 2020, most of the cities, they should become smart cities by controlling their energy consumption, because in future it's not worth it to expand the power stations or something so much. It's worth it to control it, to make it more efficient.
To reduce our consumption, basically.
Exactly.
And when you've finished with Seattle, win or lose, I mean, what's next for you, for example?
Okay, the next for us is to build our project in the level that we can mass produce our devices, and then we need to get into the market, because project-wise is something, but getting into the real market is something else. So after Imagine Cup, we have a plan to sit down, make our business plan in the way that we can get into the market.
And will this be a free application for people? They'll have to buy the actual technology to put in the home, presumably.
Okay, for now the plan we have is working like this. For example, if you want to become a Ladybug user, simply you come to our premises, our distribution centers, you make a deal with us, you choose your package. For example, if you have 20 appliances that you want to control, we're going to lend you these 20 devices that you're going to set up behind your each appliance. And then through our platform, you can control it. So it's basically a subscription.
So you go online,
base.
basically. You would go online at the moment, or can you do it through your phone?
Yeah, you can do it through your phone as well. You can just simply ordering through our website, and our technicians can come to your premises and can set up everything for you. And the next day you can have everything automatic for you.
Have you managed to find out a rough figure, of what percentage of electricity bills can be saved like this?
Yeah, because the measurement and the statistics that we had, something between 30 to 40% of electricity is wasting because of these things. For example, you are not in one room but the light is open. For example, or you are putting your washing machine in the times that is very expensive. So like this, we are measuring that between 30 to 40% you can save electricity and also the cost as well for yourself.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck in Seattle. When's the prize giving?
The competition is on 29th of July, is starting in that time, and they're going to announce the winners on 2nd of August.
We wish you the very best of luck. Puya, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, there's a brand new book just out, and if you're a fan of the British Forces Broadcasting Service, I'm sure there's an awful lot in it that will appeal to you. The author is Peter McDonagh, who rose from the very meagre ranks to the top of the BFBS tree. He's on the line to tell us all about Me and 13 Tanks. Peter, great to talk to you. First thing I need to know is, what are these 13 tanks?
Oh, well, it's like this. There are 21 Russian armoured divisions within 24 hours' drive of West Berlin during the Cold War. And in the middle of West Berlin sits the Allied forces. There's the Americans, who get a medal for just crossing the pond, so we'll discount those. The French, who want to create a small France in Berlin, we'll discount those as well. So the only people actually facing the enemy are the British. And amongst the British's assets are 13 tanks belonging to a tank squadron based at Smuts Barracks in Berlin. And the reason for Me and 13 Tanks is that even though I was not given a rifle or a machine gun or even a tank to play with, I was a de facto symbol of Western freedom against Soviet imperialism, and therefore I count myself as a Cold War warrior. So it was me and 13 tanks, and we held off, amongst us, 21 Russian armoured divisions for 49 years, from 1946 to 1994. I feel very proud of that.
You're talking, of course, about BFBS, and it has a huge role to play in the British Army, doesn't it? It's a great morale booster. It's a way for regiments to connect with each other and with their families. How did you first get into it?
As a toilet cleaner, nearly, but I even failed that one. What happened was, I was in the British Berlin Officers Club one night, and a friend of mine, Mick Cowley, who later on became famous for stealing Rudolf Hess's pyjamas when Rudolf Hess was incarcerated in the British Military Hospital in Berlin, he introduced me to this chap called Dick Norton, who was the BFBS representative in Berlin. And the introduction went something like, Hello, who are you? I'm P. McD. Who are you? I'm Dick Norton. Right, what do you do? I'm Dick Norton. Yes, but what do you do? I don't think you heard me. I'm Dick Norton. Eventually we established that he was the BFBS Berlin representative and that I was a student, at which point he said, I hate students. So the hackles were up rather, and I said, anybody can broadcast. OK, he said, if you think that, come to the studios tomorrow and do the local annos. I went to the studio the next day, did the local annos. The only two bits of me that were working was the remains of my brain and what remained of my voice. The rest of me was a trembling jelly. And once I'd sat through that 5 minutes, I knew that nothing else would do, and this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
And you did. I mean, you've got so many stories in this book from all over the world. It's a bit unfair maybe to say, can you pick a couple of your absolute favourite anecdotes?
Oh, my favourite one of all time, I guess, had to be the Fat Bastards on Tour. I'm sorry to use that word, but it is necessary. The two fat bastards were Sir David Hatch and myself. He was the chairman of the organisation. We used to go round to various foreign localities, counting the family silver and making sure that we were raising troops' morale by basically wining and dining them. It was an arduous job, but somebody had to do it. We were in flight coming into Brunei after a very tiring stint in Hong Kong, where we were forced to go to the polo club, the race course and other places like that, and forced to eat and drink and be merry. And here we were on a dry flight to Brunei, which was not a clever idea. I wasn't drinking at the time, but David certainly was, and he was missing his Cointreau like crazy. We landed at the airport underneath that wonderful sign that says, "The penalty for importing the drugs into the Brunei is the death." Sorry about the Italian accent, but you've got to start somewhere. And anyway, David was dog-tired. He slammed his suitcase down upon the carousel in the Brunei waiting hall, and the customs went mad. He said, "You not do that in Heathrow!" And he used an epithet which I'm not going to sully the airwaves with. And the result of this was that we were incarcerated in a back room. Already I could see a little packet of white powder being slipped into our suitcases, and already I could see us hanging and dangling nicely from the end of a rope somewhere in Brunei. And this little customs officials, you know, the smaller the country, the more officious their customs officials are. Rather like their electric detecting mechanisms are really sensitive in places like Gibraltar and Brunei, but, you know, they'll let you through with a tank in Moscow or Berlin or something like that. Anyway, I digress. So here we are, we're locked up in a room, and suddenly I have a brainwave. I work on number 2 customs officer, who is a nicer man altogether, and he finally lets me loose to go and see the guy who's supposed to meet us, one Dusty Miller, who was a station manager of Brunei, a BFBS man, a stalwart. Stout yeoman, you might say. Well, we got out, and there was Dusty waiting for us in the company of a chin-jutting boy's own paper chap wearing jungle greens, and he was there to pick up a regiment of people he was training in the jungle, and these were people who were generally known by the motto, "Who dares wins," and they lived in Hereford. It might give you a clue as to who they might have been, you see. So anyway, the captain says, "I'll take care of this," and he marches down the corridor to where me and David are still being sort of vaguely incarcerated, slams open the door and starts speaking native foreign at them. And when I say speaking foreign at them, they knew they were being addressed in foreign. Yeah, boodly, 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 oodly, oodly, all the rest of it. So anyway, suddenly little customs chap leaps to attention and starts saluting left, right and centre, and he says to David and me, "You go now, you go now. You don't say that at Heathrow. No. So off we went, looking bemused. Along the corridor, I turned to the captain of the SAS, for 'twas none other than he, and said, "How did you get us off the hook like that?" He said, "Oh," he said, "it's simple." He said, "I told him you were 2 of my men." So there we were, 2 fat bastards on tour, otherwise known as SAS troopers, the most unlikely SAS candidates you've ever seen in your life. But it was good to be temporarily so, if only for a moment. But that's the sort of tale that we have, and you know, there are other horror stories as well. I dwindled for a number of years in a dark place, and we have not been backward in coming forward on that either. But mainly it's sort of, if you like, a comedian's look through a career. Career used in the word of a car skidding over black ice rather than a stately climb progressively up a ladder.
But you did climb the ladder. You oversaw a lot of reforms in the service, I think. And you spent also some time in Cyprus. So, your memories of Cyprus?
My memories of Cyprus is George behind the bar in the officers' mess in Decalia. And every so often, the young British Army officers used to come in, wet behind the ears wasn't the word for it, the subalterns, you know, the whoopers, you know, with the dropped W's and R's and all the rest of it, and not being able to quite to get their heads round anything that involved an IQ larger than 2 figures. And they would say to George, "George, we're going into town tonight. Is there any chance you could teach us a few words of Cypriot?" "Of course," said George, in the way that only a trainee rapist can. And he would sort of say to them, "If you want to say thank you, you say half a garage door." "What?" "Half a garage door. That is Cypriot for thank you." And so they're being slowly trained to this. What is, if we see a nice girl and we want to compliment her on her looks, well, you say very nice in Cypriot. And what's very nice in Cypriot? Polyphila. Polyphila. And so it went on. He was teaching them all these spoof words, and then just to add to it, a huge collection of Cypriot very nasty words, which I don't remember, fortunately, which had to do with if they asked for a taxi or if they asked for a drink at the bar and all the rest of it. You know, it was more or less, I would like to do something rude to your mummy.
You obviously have had a wonderful life. And to have had time and patience to jot all of this down and put it into a book that will reach out across the world to so many former and serving members of the British Army. Was it a work of love, or was it something that you really felt you wanted to do? Why did you start writing it?
Well, when I started writing it, I didn't know that I wasn't going to be around for very much longer. Halfway through the book, halfway through the publication, the publication process of the book, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I've only got a few months to live. So it provided an incentive, I suppose, in advance. I didn't know that at the time, but one of my bucket list ideas was to write a book anyway. And so I fulfilled my bucket list, and this in turn helped me because I have invented something now called the reverse bucket list. And it goes like this. All the things that I did exciting, like go over Angel Falls in a Lynx helicopter vertically down for 1,000 feet, would be on anybody's bucket list. I've already done it, so that's on the bucket list, right? So anything that I've already done that's really great, like introducing ABBA on stage in Neuss near Dusseldorf with Asters in 1974, all of these things are in my bucket list. The great thing is, all my bucket list is complete because I've done everything that's on it, because I invented the bucket list after I did the events.
It sounds wonderful, and so is your attitude to all that's going on now in your life, Peter. The book is obviously out. Who can get it from where? Because, I mean, these days there are so many formats.
It'll be out on Kindle in the not too distant, and it'll be cheap as chips, and it won't take up too much of your pocket money, and please help a poor old starving man and his crust and all the rest of it, because otherwise, you know, we won't get to eat tomorrow.
The ebullient Peter McDonagh, a former colleague and indeed boss of mine at BFBS. His book is available on Amazon for £11.95 sterling or £5.99 for the Kindle edition. And you should know that all the profits from the book are going to Macmillan Cancer Nurses. That's Peter McDonagh and me and 13 tanks. Well worth the read. And now, before we wrap up, good news for the thousands of homeowners, both Cypriot and expatriate, who've been waiting years for their title deeds. They will perhaps be heartened by Interior Minister Socrates Hassikos' acknowledgement on Monday that the state, both government and parliament, he said, had failed miserably on the issue. He went on to say that the backlog of some 23,000 applications must, according to the Troika's bailout terms, be cleared before the end of the year. He also said his ministry would do everything in its power to sort out the issue, adding that a radical review of procedures was necessary. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.